Quite often in these open central positions, you tend to get draws because the one open file leads to a lot of exchanges. It need not be that way though, and it certainly wasn't the case in our next game, which comes from the 2012 British Championship between Grandmasters Gawain Jones and Matthew Turner. The opening gave no indication of the fireworks to come, as Turner employed the solid Petrov defence. White took on e5, black played d6, white brought his knight back, and now knight takes e4 produces an open central position, where again we see you've got this open e-file. White played knight c3, which is all the fashion these days. Back in 2012 it was still very popular, and white is basing his play on the variation knight takes c3, d takes c3, bishop e7, and now some move of that bishop on c1. The bishop comes out, whether to e3 or f4 we don't know. Black castles, white brings his queen up, and now the idea is to cast on the queen side and push the king side pawns up the board to get an attack going. And that has proved extremely popular with aggressive players. So Turner plays an old-fashioned retreat here, which Petrosian and Smyslov favoured in their day, but which is not really the chess of 2012. But then Matthew goes his own way in the opening. He's quite happy to play these unusual continuations and to aim for uncharted territory. But knight f6, well, it gives a passive impression. However, it's not so easy for white to get an advantage against it. After all, what has black done wrong? With one open file, it's easy to see black playing easy moves such as d5, getting this bishop out, putting a rook on e8, and then just chopping all the pieces off. So white's got to fight against that idea. Again, we see this little move h3, useful in every circumstance, preventing black from playing bishop g4. So Turner just gets his pieces out, and over the next couple of moves, that's exactly what they do. Active development is the order of the day. Knight c6. So when the knight comes out to c6, that tells me black is thinking about knight b4, attacking this bishop on d3. After that, hopefully, comes bishop f5, should white move the bishop. Of course, white can stop that, and Gawain did by playing a3, but black reasons white has substituted a pawn move for a piece move, so this should favour him, and therefore Turner gets on with development by playing rook e8. I mean, what is wrong with black's position here? The only thing you would say against it is that black's got this pawn on d6 vis-a-vis the pawn on d4. This pawn on d4 seems to give white more freedom with development, whereas for black it's not so easy. The bishop on e7 is blocked in, so on and so forth. You'd expect white to have a slight edge here. But of course black can remedy that at some moment by playing d5. So whatever white does, he's got to be ready for that move. Well, white can't do without castling, and now black plays this little move h6. White retreats to e2, and now black plays this move d5. So Turner's doing pretty well, and he's coming close to equality. White plays b3. It seems as though white has decided on a plan with bishop b2, or maybe c4. Black brings his bishop to e6, anticipating c4. White goes knight f4, and black plays bishop d6. So no sign of any exchanges yet on the open file in terms of rooks or major pieces. In fact, white is studiously avoiding playing a move like rook e1 here, trying to create play to give him winning chances. So bishop takes f4 by Turner. White recaptures, and now a rather passive looking move by black, rook to c8. Well, the general rule for rooks is that you put your rooks on open files or behind pawns you want to push. So is black somehow thinking about pushing that c pawn up the board at some point? It's hard to see how he might do that, but possibly there are some ideas in the position connected with ideas such as taking on c4, putting his knight on a5, and then playing c5. It all seems rather vague. I mean, black could also have considered knight e4 in this position. That looks more Petrov-like. And if rook e1, reinforcing the knight with f5. Of course, this is bound to lead to a slight loosening of black's position. But maybe this is a better moment for rook c8. Black's got a bit more space in the centre. And that strong Petrov knight on e4 So, okay, you know, you make your choices during the game. Turner decided to play rook c8. White played rook e1, preventing knight e4, note. And black played queen to d7. So again, you know, when you see that move, you think, well, is he really going to sack on h3 at some point? It certainly comes into the frame as a possibility. So you can't ignore it as white. So Gawain puts his knight in on e5. That forces an exchange, which is black is slightly short on space. He's quite happy to play. D takes c4. B takes c4. And now there's vision to rook e d8. Well, another good move by Turner. It seems as though he's gradually equalising the game. If white takes on f6, then black will take on d3. And we see that black is in charge of an open file in the centre. We've got two open files now. And when you've got a situation like this, there can easily be a lot of exchanges and the position fizzles out. So this is why Jones, who really wants to win this game, I think, plays rook e3. And now queen comes into d4, another tactically based move. So when white takes on f6, black takes on f4. Well, if it weren't for that pawn on f6, I think Turner would be very happy here. So Jones is really keen on keeping that pawn for as long as possible on that square. And he plays a very good move now, rook f3. And when black's queen moves, he plays queen to b1. This is a really good move because it not only sets up threats against b7, it also anticipates black playing g6 when white would be delighted to hoover that pawn off the board. And the black king is a goner. Never mind, going back to the game, Turner plays b6. F takes g7. Don't think he could avoid taking on g7 now, but he's quite keen to do it because he's managed to manoeuvre his queen into a position to land a check. Back comes Turner's queen into the centre, and now queen to c1. And suddenly you have to prefer white, if only for the fact that the black king is more open than the white king. You know, it's more difficult to play black's position because of his open king. So queen h4, queen e3, rook d6, and now rook f4. I think I slightly prefer rook e1 in this position, and I wonder why Jones rejected that move. Queen e5 check will be a coming centralisation, and it's not at all easy to see how black equalises here. For instance, let's have a look at a couple of lines. If he plays rook e8, we go queen e5 check. That more or less forces f6, and then white just brings his queen back, with the black king position looking even looser than it was before. If after rook e1 he goes rook c d8, which looks more coherent, black coordinates his rooks, then I think we go check, another check, king goes back, and now queen e3, with again pressure for white. And the point is, of course, that if black takes on d3 here, we are going to take on e6. And now the black king is really starting to feel the heat. So black's probably got to go f5 after queen e3, and then we go c5. And if f4, rook f3, takes check, bishop f7, rook takes h4, takes, with a winning position. So again, I can't put myself into the other guy's mind why he didn't play rook e1. Perhaps he just thought rook f4 was very strong, as after queen g5, white accelerates his pressure by going h4. So over comes the black queen, trying to get exchanges together. Queen g3 check was played, king f8, and only now rook to e1. Queen takes a3, very bold. Gawain brings his rook into the game. And now there's a check, and Turner brings his queen back. So the black queen has done a grand tour of the board, picking up the pawn on a3 en route. And it's up to white now to show why he's given that pawn. I think Turner is actually defending this position pretty well. But it just goes to show, the eventual result of this game just goes to show how difficult it is when you're playing a really strong grandmaster to play this with an open king. It's kind of like martial arts fighting, you know, you're somehow keeping the other guy at bay. Really difficult. So queen f3 was played, black coordinated, white went queen e4, black went king e7, rook g3, queen h8, rook gf3, and now with his king wide open, Matthew makes a mistake by playing rook to f8. What he should do is to play rook d4, with the amazing point that if white takes on f7, black plays his king to d6. And of course we can forgive Matthew Turner for not playing this continuation, because it's what, move 38. You still have a couple of moves to go to the time control. You really don't want your king wandering around the centre of the board. Nevertheless, it's actually quite difficult to finish black off in this position. And if white can't finish him off, then black is doing okay in this position. So, what happened in the game? Rook f8 was played. The white queen came in with threats to c7. Black defended. White took a pawn. Queen to e5. Well, there was a second opportunity here with rook to a8. And if queen b7, rook to a5. There are some fantastic manoeuvres available for the black major pieces in this position. And if queen c6, rook c5. With this excellent manoeuvre, black has managed to defend himself yet again. But again, you know, it's very hard to see that stuff when you're short of time. So queen e5, black puts his queen in the centre. There's a check, and now black went c5. White went g3. Black tried to keep everything together. White played bishop f5. And now king f8. Possibly the time scramble had burned out Matthew's resistance. What should he play? Well, he could probably hang on by playing queen g7 and then rook d6. Try and hold this position. But king f8, rook e3. Black resigned. Why does he resign? Because there's going to be a devastating capture on e6. And if he goes something like takes, 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 then queen b2 is the excellent reply. This is what makes black's position untenable. The white queen is incredibly mobile. And if rook d4, well, queen takes b6. I think to summarise these open central positions is actually quite easy. Active, aggressive and pointed development is the order of the day. You shouldn't go passive. And although open central positions can often lead to exchanges on the open file, they need not do so. In fact, we've seen two games where fighting play was the order of the day.